All right, guys, so this is as unsurprising as it is pathetic. After 40 plus days, the longest government shutdown in American history, Democrats just completely caved, right? With millions of Americans who are losing access to desperately needed food stamps, with tens of millions of Americans who are either going to lose their health insurance or see their health insurance premiums skyrocket, with chaos at airports around the country because air traffic controllers aren't being paid. With all of this suffering that's been taking place for over a month now, Democrats just folded in exchange for nothing. For absolutely nothing. So here's the deal, sort of in meme format. Democrats receive a pinky promise that there will maybe be a vote in December to extend the ACA subsidies, which could possibly prevent premiums from skyrocketing as much as they're set to go up. In some cases, they're going to double. For some people, they'll triple. But they get a pinky promise that there will be a vote in the Senate on those ACA subsidies. Now, keep in mind, this vote is basically guaranteed to fail. Republicans aren't going to magically turn around and be in favor of extending these ACA subsidies. So they get a failed vote in December in exchange for giving Republicans everything that they were asking for 40 days ago before the shutdown started. So what was the point in any of this? I mean, here's a real breakdown of what's actually going on here. From Politico, the Senate voted to break the shutdown stalemate on Sunday, paving the way for the government to reopen as soon as later this week. The 60-40 vote to take the first steps towards ending the shutdown came hours after enough Democrats agreed to support a package that would fund multiple agencies and programs for the full fiscal year and all others until January 30th of next year. And again, in exchange, Democrats have a commitment, a promise from the Trump administration. How reliable do you guys think that they're going to be to rehire government workers fired at the start of the funding lapse, and the promise of a Senate floor vote in December on legislation to extend expiring Obamacare tax credits, a vote that again is all but guaranteed to fail. Now, as pointed out by Kyle here, these are the traitors. These are the people who need to be immediately primaried for voting with Republicans to end the government shutdown in exchange for nothing, essentially screwing millions and millions of Americans on an already ridiculous healthcare system. You got Senator Tim Kaine, John Fetterman, Jeanne Shaheen, Maggie Hassan, Dick Durbin, Jackie Rosen, Cortez Masto, and Angus King. So all of these people need to immediately resign or retire or be immediately primaried. Now, we also have this point here made by Crystal that apparently one of the big factors in terms of why some of these Democrats folded is because of the filibuster, right? So Donald Trump was basically floating the idea that if the shutdown continued, that Republicans should basically move on without Democrats and nuke the filibuster, which would be a positive thing, right? Keep in mind, the filibuster is basically just an undemocratic blockade that makes it so that you need 60 votes instead of the 51 that you would typically need as a majority in order to pass most of the good shit that we want done in this country. Now, corporate establishment, so-called moderate centrist Democrats, love the filibuster because it means when they're in power, when they control the House, when they control the Senate and the White House, they don't really have to do anything with that power because they say, oh, well, we need Republicans to come along for this. Oops, Republicans block this. We can't get anything popular done because of the precious filibuster. So apparently they were so worried that the filibuster was going to be nuked and that would mean they might have to do something real in the future that they decided to cave on this shutdown fight. Now, we also have here from Ken Klippenstein calling out sort of congressional progressives for what seems to be a lack of a real plan here to get rid of the extremely unpopular Democratic leadership. So he says congressional progressives' plan, as far as I can tell, is just to wait for Schumer to be up for re-election 3 years from now. I mean, he says House Republicans kick their speaker to the curb. Democrats could do the same, but choose not to. They could do this tomorrow. You could get rid of Chuck Schumer. It wouldn't be that difficult. It would just take a little bit of courage. Too bad many of these Democrats are complete cowards and refuse to even call out Chuck Schumer on this, let alone push for him to be replaced. Now, there are some Democrats, few and far between, like Ro Khanna here, who are willing to directly call for Chuck Schumer to step down. Here he said, Senator Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. If you can't lead the fight to stop healthcare premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for? And the answer to that is nothing. He will fight for absolutely nothing. He will tuck his tail in between his legs and bow down to Donald Trump. Now, to make this point explicitly clear in terms of how much of a winning fight this could have been for Democrats, I mean, this is a recent poll that showed about 3/4 or 74% of US adults are in favor of extending these tax credits, which are set to expire at the end of the year, marginally down from 78% in September. So, I mean, again, like, this is a 74 to 78% issue that you could have stuck this fight on, right? Republicans are about to skyrocket everybody's premiums. Okay, they're about to kick millions and millions of Americans off of their health insurance. This is not a difficult fight to win, right? Especially considering that you just came off of an election where you curb stomped Republicans, and that was in the middle of this government shutdown, right? I mean, here's some of the data on the shift from 2024 to 2025 by demographic. I mean, you have basically by every single demographic. With women, it went from -1 in 2024 to -30. I mean, you can break it down like Hispanics and Latinos, -9 in 2024 to -34 for Democrats. I mean, you have Black, again, 77 to 86. You have Asian, 19 to 60. I mean, you could break it down, 18 to 29-year-olds, -15 to -41 for Democrats. By every single metric, essentially, you just swept in these most recent elections that we covered. And that was in the middle of this government shutdown. And you were running on specific, well, not you in general, Democratic establishment, but some of the most popular candidates from this recent election cycle, people like Zoran Mamdani, were specifically running on like an affordability agenda, right? And I'll show you some clips from what Trump thinks about the affordability agenda. Surprise, he's not happy about it. But, you know, this is the kind of the moment right now where you could be winning a fight like this. Instead, they choose to fold, and again, fold in a situation where all they are going to get out of this is a failed vote a month from now, so that everybody's premiums are going to skyrocket. So what is the plan here? Is the plan to just fuck over millions of Americans and then hope that come 2026 in the midterm elections that you can just say, look, it's Republicans' fault that your premiums have doubled or you got kicked off your health insurance, so please come vote for us. I promise that we'll fight for you next time, maybe in the future, hypothetically. Is that really the plan here? I mean, it's absolutely pathetic. Now, we also had Bernie Sanders here on the Senate floor, calling out how insane this moment is in the context of the already broken American healthcare system. Let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this.
Everybody in America knows that our current healthcare system is broken. It is dysfunctional. It is cruel. It is by far the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and the only healthcare system of any major country that does not guarantee healthcare to all people as a human right, covering every man, woman, and child. We are unique in that respect. And yet tonight, what this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse. So let's be clear what this vote is about. If this vote succeeds, over 20 million Americans are going to see at least a doubling in their premiums in the Affordable Care Act. In my state of Vermont and throughout this country, for certain groups of people, it will be a tripling and a quadrupling of their premiums. There are people who will now be paying 50% of their limited incomes for health care. Does anybody in the world think that makes sense? And if this resolution is passed tonight, we are on a pathway to throw 15 million Americans off of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. 15 million.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, as he says, our healthcare system is already inhumane and grotesque, right? And keep in mind, it wasn't that long ago that we just had a health insurance CEO who was murdered, like straight up murdered in the street. And a huge portion of the American people were like, yeah, kind of understandable, right? That if that's the reality in this country, something is wrong with our healthcare system. As Bernie points out, that we're the only country that runs a health insurance system in the way that we do in this country that is basically for the benefit of a handful of wealthy health insurance executives and at the expense of the entirety of our population. We already have millions of people who are uninsured, millions of people who can't really afford their health insurance. We're talking about taking this completely broken and dysfunctional and corrupt system and then making it worse for people. He's saying there, people are going to be paying up to 50% of their income on health insurance. You cannot do that. That's not a realistic situation. I mean, medical debt is already the #1 cause of bankruptcy in this country. And we're talking about basically making health insurance completely unaffordable for a huge portion of the US population. I mean, there has to be a breaking point. at some point? What is the plan to the Republicans and to some of the Democrats who are okay with letting these subsidies, which are really just barely even a Band-Aid on, as he points out here, a broken system, but what is the plan moving forward for health insurance from Republicans? Like, is it just keep letting people be immiserated and go bankrupt and die because they don't have adequate access to healthcare? That's the solution. They don't have a plan. They don't have a plan to expand access or to lower costs or anything like that. There is no other plan on the table other than you get to suffer more so that a handful of people can profit more. That's the plan that's on the table. And it shouldn't even be a question at this point that Medicare for all is not only the solution, but that should be a litmus test for any Democrats that you want to support moving forward. Like, that's not a high bar to say, let's guarantee that everybody has their healthcare needs met, that people aren't going bankrupt, that people aren't dying due to a lack of healthcare or health insurance. Like, this is a very easy, simple fix to a clearly broken and corrupt system that we have in place right now that, as he points out there, is going to get a lot worse. Now, this was even so pathetic from Democrats that you had people like Ezra fucking Klein who are calling them out. Here he said, if I were in the Senate, I wouldn't vote for this compromise. Shutdowns are an opportunity to make your arguments, and the country was just starting to pay attention. If Trump wanted to cancel flights over Thanksgiving rather than keep healthcare costs down, I don't see why Democrats should save him from making his priorities so exquisitely clear. And I worry that Democrats have just taught Trump that they will fold under pressure. That's the kind of lesson he remembers. Ezra Klein is right. Right? I would not typically say that on this channel, to say the least. This is like a establishment pilled, status quo, managerial, neoliberal type of person that we're talking about in Ezra Klein. And even he's saying, like, this is not a difficult fight to win. I mean, as he puts it here, like, if this shutdown continued, you would have had millions of Americans who weren't able to do Thanksgiving if they had to travel anywhere to do so. And Trump is basically causing that to happen because he's not willing to extend subsidies that could prevent your health insurance from doubling or tripling or quadrupling, depending on what your situation is. That is the easiest fight that you could possibly imagine, the easiest case and argument to make to the American people. And Democrats said, no, we're just going to fold. And as he points out there, teach Trump the lesson that when it comes to this kind of a pressure, we're just going to give up. We're just going to give up in exchange for nothing. It's not as if they got anything as a part of these negotiations. They just accepted what was basically offered to them 40 fucking days ago. I mean, it doesn't get more pathetic than this. Now, it was even so bad that we had, this sleazy greaseball over here, Gavin Newsom, who came out and said, it sounds to me like some of my colleagues in the Senate just decided that we're playing by the old set of rules and may have rolled over. Right now, we've got to hold the line because I think America will become unrecognizable in a year or two unless we fight back. So Ezra Klein is against this. Gavin Newsom is against this. I mean, again, if those are the kinds of people who are saying what you just did was a cowardly bitch move, then you know that you fucked up. Now, we also have MSNBC on this panel here ripping into Donald Trump or ripping into Chuck Schumer. Let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this, and then we'll watch how Chuck Schumer is trying to spin this into somehow not being his fault directly.
To me, this idea of left or right or more progressive on ACA subsidies, almost 80% of Americans want the subsidies to continue. That's not left or right. That's right and wrong. Almost 60% of Republicans want the ACA subsidies to continue. Chuck Schumer should have negotiated a better deal. He should have been in the public more. He's not a bad guy, any stretch. He's just not the right person at the right time. We're going through a different time. You're dealing with a GOP that's an anti-democratic movement. They don't care what the American people think on an issue like this. So I think, honestly, this is the end of Chuck Schumer as we go forward.
What do you think of that, Anthony?
I've never been a Chuck Schumer fan.
Look at this, 2 votes.
But I'm not ready to write his obituary just yet. I mean, you don't get to be the Senate Democratic leader for as long as he has without some raw political skills.
So explain to me then, from a purely political or raw calculation, what is it that Chuck Schumer's doing? Winking and nodding?
I'm not his fan. I'm just trying to acknowledge his raw political instincts. I thought he walks around with his flip phone from another era. God bless flip phone. I don't want the flip phone lobby. I think I said this last time I was here to come after me when I was criticizing Chuck Schumer. But
I didn't mean it as a critical thing. I just meant saying, like, help me understand what could possibly be a political calculation for Chuck Schumer here. Because to your point, if he's looking at where some parts of the party are going, if he's looking at where some people who are up for election, why would he say emphatic no and then make it even more?
So okay, I can offer a theory.
Please,
I don't know if it's correct.
The emphatic no only.
So the answer to that question is there is no political theory to what he just did. He just folded. Like, there is no advantage to be gleaned here from Democrats for losing this fight. Again, you didn't get anything on the ACA subsidies other than an upcoming failed vote, so you didn't really materially help the American people at all. I mean, this has to be the end of Chuck Schumer, as that first guest was saying there. Again, 80% issue. And Chuck Schumer says, no, I think we're just going to fold on this, right? Again, especially after you just won these elections, right? You have the momentum. Trump is plummeting right now in his approval rating, and people are associating the shutdown with him. They're blaming him and Republicans for the shutdown and for the rising costs that they're about to see. And you say, no, we're done. Now, here's sort of the game that Chuck Schumer is playing to dodge accountability for this. So he says, America is in the midst of a Republican-made healthcare crisis, a crisis so severe, so urgent, and so devastating for American families that I cannot support a continuing resolution that fails to address it. I am voting no. So this is how sick and twisted this man, Chuck Schumer, is. And one of the only things that I disagreed with this first guy here is that Chuck Schumer is a bad person. He is a bad person. He's wildly corrupt. The reason he's in this position as the head of the Democrats in the Senate is because he's the best at bringing in donations from billionaires and corporations. That's kind of why he's in this position in the first place. He's a bad person. He's a corrupt man. And he's slimy in the sense that he's saying he's going to vote no on this continuing resolution so that he doesn't have to take the heat for directly voting to fold, when he was the guy behind the scenes who helped this vote to happen in the first place. He's the leader of the Democratic caucus in the Senate, right? You are the leader. This could not have happened without your approval. Right. And so he's coming on the back end and saying, I personally am going to vote no. I just helped all of these other people to be in a position to vote yes. Right. And as pointed out here by one of the people who did vote yes on reopening the government, she was asked, Schumer says that he's voting no. Did you do this outside of leadership? And Shaheen says, no, we kept leadership informed throughout. We also had this here as reported yesterday. Schumer was more involved than reported with the attempt to cave on the government shutdown. The Gang of 8 Senate Democrats had his approval, and he was getting daily updates. The cave almost happened on Thursday after the election. So immediately after you just got these big wins across the country in the election, you say, yeah, I'm ready to fold, right? And again, as they point out here, Chuck Schumer deeply involved in this, getting daily updates and giving approval for these Democrats to go and vote to reopen the government. So the idea that you get to now sit back and say, oh, I'm voting no, I'm really not in favor of this, fucking bullshit. You fucking liar and coward. I mean, at least stand by what you're doing behind the scenes. Part of the reason I think that maybe he has such a deep unfavorable rating right now, he's sitting at minus 20.4, only a 27% approval rating. I think he might have a lower approval rating somehow than Donald Trump himself, and also lower than Congress, which typically has absolutely abysmal approval ratings in general. So he's sitting at 47.6% unfavorable and only 27.2% favorable right now. Again, step the fuck aside. Step aside. This is not your moment. You're not the guy. Now, we also have here Senator Hassan, who's coming out with a statement where she said, with the government reopening shortly, Republicans now finally have to come to the table, or make no mistake, Americans will remember who stood in the way. So her logic here is, after we just gave Republicans everything that they want, they'll have no choice but to negotiate with us. What are you talking about? What kind of twisted, fucked up logic is this? With the government reopening, now Republicans will have to come to the table? What? Again, it seems like her logic here is just that, yeah, we know that Americans are about to be absolutely pummeled into oblivion by the rising costs that they're about to see for their health insurance, but they'll be able to blame Republicans for that. And so maybe that'll help us in the midterms. That seems to be sort of the twisted logic that she's using there. We also had Shaheen here saying, who was asked by a reporter, what do you say to your colleagues who say that this isn't a fight, this is a capitulation? She says, we have a guaranteed vote by a guaranteed date. And the reporter says, there is no guarantee that this will become law. And she says, there was never a guarantee that this would become law. So again, they know that this upcoming vote in December that they were promised is going to fail. They're just kind of accepting that. I mean, again, rolling over in a chalk outline of themselves. Now, we also have Senator Angus King, who voted for this government, for the government to reopen, weighing in here on Morning Joe, where he just straight up says, I guess we shouldn't try to fight Trump because we can't win.
Well, Joe, you have to go back to what the strategy was at the beginning of the shutdown. There were two goals, both of which I support. One was standing up to Donald Trump. The other was getting some resolution on the ACA premium tax credit issue. The problem was the shutdown wasn't accomplishing either goals, and there was practically, well, there was zero likelihood that it was going to. In terms of standing up to Donald Trump, the shutdown actually gave him more power, Exhibit A being what he's done with SNAP and SNAP benefits across the country. Oh, by the way, Joe, you're going to love this. Guess who's getting paid during the shutdown? not the park rangers or air traffic controllers, the ICE agents. Under special law, under that big, awful bill that they passed last summer, the ICE agents are being paid. Nobody else is. So standing up to Donald Trump didn't work. It actually gave him more power.
Okay, so I guess what's the plan then? Just fold indefinitely, fold on every single fight that comes onto the table? That's the logic here. Standing up to Trump didn't work, so we should just give up the fight? And by the way, it kind of was working. I mean, the argument that you had to make to the American people, which was already like by default the argument that Americans accepted, was that Donald Trump is keeping the government shut down. Republicans are keeping the government shut down because they want to ensure that your health insurance is either taken away from you or that your premiums double or triple or quadruple. That's the case that you're making to the American people, which, by the way, is the reality. So by what metric did standing up to Trump not work? Like, the only losing situation is the one that you guys have carved out for yourself, right? And so there you had Angus King, I guess, just fucking pathetic. I mean, I don't even know what more to say about this. Standing up to Trump didn't work. By the way, this is the guy that we're talking about. So in the wake of Zoran Mamdani winning, and as Democrats sort of swept around the country as, average working class people's material reality is absolute hell right now, he's angry about the affordability narrative that was mostly pushed by guys like Zoran Mamdani. But let's go ahead and watch this first clip, and then I got a couple more teed up. This is the opposition that Democrats were up against that they just completely folded to.
So I just heard this yesterday that Walmart said that the Thanksgiving was 25% more expensive under Biden. That's to me, that's a big number, because Walmart's respected. I mean, Walmart is Walmart, and, they're giving you prices. So that would mean that the whole series of pricing and costs, the groceries and everything else, it was a con job. It was a con job. Affordability, they call it, was a con job by the Democrats. The Democrats are good at a few things: cheating on elections and conning people with facts that aren't true. It was 25%. Walmart just announced it.
He's saying that the concept of people running on or people caring about affordability, right? People who think that, average things in your life are not affordable, whether that's rent, whether that's healthcare, whether that's groceries, as he's talking about here. Caring about affordability is a con job, that it's not something that's a real concern, that it's for no reason Zoran Mamdani was able to upset the entire Democratic political establishment in New York for no reason, apparently. People actually aren't struggling to make ends meet right now. This is like some of the Biden logic that we saw during the last administration, where people were suffering, right? And people can feel that. They can live their own lives and understand that things are not affordable for themselves and for their family, that they're barely scraping by. And you would have people from the Biden administration who are, pointing out economic metrics like the GDP is growing and the stock market is doing well. And, inflation's actually not as bad as people are making it out to be. And it's like, even if some of those metrics are true on paper, if people are suffering and they can feel that rent is unaffordable, that health insurance is unaffordable, that childcare is unaffordable, that groceries are unaffordable, you're not going to be able to gaslight them into feeling like everything is okay when it's just objectively not for average Americans. So this is Trump going full Biden administration logic and just trying to deny that things are unaffordable right now. I mean, it's amazing to see happen in real time. I mean, another clip here, he said, our energy costs are way down. Not true, just a lie. He says our groceries are way down. Again, not true, that's a lie. Everything is way down, and the press doesn't report it. Thanksgiving meals are down 25%, so I don't want to hear about affordability. I mean, first off, I don't know the specific metric that he's talking about with the Walmart 25% down for a Thanksgiving thing. I don't know if that's a specific deal or metric that Walmart is using or whatever, but I mean, the fact that, again, he's using this logic to say, I don't want to hear about affordability. This is something that next year, in all likelihood, if Democrats run on the affordability messaging, you're going to see this in every single Democratic advertisement in the 2026 midterms. I don't want to hear about affordability. This is the opposition that we're talking about. By the way, he also floated because he's sort of attacking the affordability messaging from Democrats at the same time that he understands that it was wildly effective and that the fact that things are unaffordable right now in this country is going to be a problem for Republicans in 2026. And so he's sort of like throwing shit at the wall in order to try to gin up some sort of idea that I'm taking action to make things more affordable. And so this is one of the things that he posted on his Truth Social account. He says, great American presidents, 30-year mortgage that was created under President Roosevelt. And then President Trump is now creating the 50-year house mortgage. I need you guys to understand how absolutely deranged this kind of a proposal is. Like, number one, this would not lower housing costs at all. It just would not be effective in terms of lowering housing costs. What this would do is it would allow Americans to have a basically lifelong mortgage that they will never pay off. The bank will always own their home. They'll never be homeowners, right? For 50 fucking years. 50 years. And on top of that, you might save, I think some of the estimates were like, on a 30-year mortgage versus a 50-year mortgage, you might save like $100 to $200 a month in your mortgage payment, but you're going to end up paying basically double the cost of the house initially on interest payments over the course of that 50 years. So you're paying way more in the long run, hundreds of thousands of dollars more in the long run. You're saving maybe a couple $100 a month. And then on top of that, you're never going to own your goddamn house, right? You will own nothing and you will be happy, apparently. I mean, think about if you were like a 30-year-old in this country, which most 30-year-olds I don't think can afford to even buy a house anyways right now. But if you were like 30 years old, you would be paying off your house until you're 80, right? Keep in mind, the average life expectancy in this country is around 78 years old. You would never pay off your house, even if you bought it at the age of 30, which is not the average age that, your American home buyer is right now, given that it's so unaffordable. So this was one of the insane plots that Trump was throwing out there. And then we also have Trump apparently coming out and floating the idea of a $2,000 tariff rebate check. So he's thinking about, and I don't even think this is actually going to happen, but this is how you get a sense of how desperate he is right now. A $2,000 basically check, or I guess tax rebate or something like that, that's going to apparently be paid for by the revenue raised by tariffs, right? Keep in mind, Trump still is under this delusional and factually incorrect belief that tariffs are paid by foreign countries. No, they're paid by companies that import into the United States, and then those costs are passed on to consumers. So you're basically taxing consumers with these tariffs that aren't effective in any way, shape, or form in terms of bringing, domestic manufacturing back to the U.S. They're not effective. You're raising costs on everyday goods that Americans are having to pay for, and then you're going to turn around and give us a couple $1,000 in a rebate check that, again, is going to do absolutely nothing to address the fundamental flaws within the U.S. economy. I mean, again, I guess this is how you know how desperate he is in this moment. And this is the guy, I can't stress it enough, that Democrats just folded to. A guy who's throwing out, shit ideas like this on a daily basis. A guy who's saying, I don't give a shit about affordability. Don't talk to me about affordability. I'm just going to gaslight you and pretend like everything is doing great right now, even though every, American in this country can feel that it's not. So there's your update for today, guys. Again, as unsurprising as it is pathetic, Democrats, after 40 days of all of this suffering that just took place across the country, folded in exchange for absolutely nothing. So, primary, all of these Democrats, obviously, who folded on this, get Chuck Schumer the fuck out of leadership, get Hakeem Jeffries out of leadership as well while we're at it. And there has to be some sort of breaking point within the Democratic Party. There has to be some sort of consequences for this absolute cowardice that we're seeing from them.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying